Hi, this is Dr. Fields. As you can tell, I'm still sick. Um, my voice reminds me of that episode from Friends when Phoebe was sick, and she thought it made her voice sound much better when she was singing. I don't think that's the case here. Anyway, hopefully in the next day or two, my voice will improve, and I hope that you can hear me okay. Today, what I want to discuss is measurement. It's super, super important to get this right, because what we don't want to happen is we don't want, for lack of a better way of saying it, false results. If you're making progress, we want to be able to capture that. Psychologists are experts in assessment. A lot of times we're assessing clients' behavior, and it's important to accurately assess our clients' behavior so that we can see if they're making improvements. We also do a lot of research, and so it's very important to be well-versed in assessment so that we're able to see whether or not our experiment is yielding certain types of results and information, et cetera, et cetera. So I know a lot about assessment, and I know a lot about weight loss assessment because I had to learn it. Because if I wanted to be successful at losing weight, I had to have a successful assessment plan. So one of the things they teach as a psychologist is this idea of keeping things uniform or standard. With certain types of assessment measures, we actually have what's called standardization procedure. And what that basically means is whatever type of assessment plan that you set up, you want it to be consistent, and you want it to take place under the same kinds of conditions. Because if it is not set up this way, then your results could be unduly influenced by other types of factors. And this is no truer in weight loss assessment. What you want to do is, first, you want to weigh yourself one time a week at the same time every week. And that's kind of keeping with this idea of being uniform and standard. You don't want to weigh yourself more than one time a week, because there are a lot of water weight fluctuations and other types of fluctuations in our bodily systems that, are going to influence results on a daily basis, much more so than on a weekly basis. They can influence them on a weekly basis as well, but much less likely. So weigh yourself once a week, and don't weigh yourself less than that, because we want accountability. You don't want to go longer than a week without weighing yourself. So just trust me on this, one time a week. Don't choose a day that's going to be after a day you typically might consume more calories, because your body weight will not be as accurately reflected in that assessment. Because if it's one of these days that's atypical, where you tend to eat more, I'm thinking really like the weekend. Like, let's say you like to go out to eat on Friday night and indulge a little bit more than you normally would. Saturday would not be a great day to weigh yourself. For me, Friday's always worked out the best. My wife and I don't tend to go out to eat during the week. And so Friday early morning is not going to be affected usually by any kind of, extra calories on a day of going out eating or something like that. There are times I had to switch a day, like Thanksgiving. I didn't want to weigh myself Friday after Thanksgiving, because I knew I was going to be eating much more than I normally would on that day. And so I weighed myself that day instead, on Thursday. The other thing you want to do is you want to weigh yourself first thing in the morning before you consume anything, because again, you don't want your body weight unduly influenced by ingesting any kind of liquids or food or anything. You want to get that body weight reading as soon as you wake up. You can start the coffee machine first. That's normally what I have to do. That's a must. But start the coffee machine. Don't actually start drinking the coffee yet till you weigh yourself. Now, another thing I found, digital scales can be a little bit buggy sometimes, so that sometimes they almost need to be reset. I've sometimes had this experience where I'll get on the scale a week later and it's the exact same body weight, which the probability of that happening is almost impossible. And I almost have to reset the digital scale. And the way I do that is I simply put something else on it to get a totally different weight reading before I get on the scale. It's just a little hack for those of you that have buggy digital scales. So that's something to keep in mind. And I like to do 3 readings, again, for consistency, because sometimes the digital scales can be buggy. And when I get the same number 3 times in a row, then I know, or 3 times, let's say, then I know that that's most likely the accurate reading. You know, sometimes you'll step on the scale 1 time, they'll give you 1 reading, a second time, a different reading, a third time, the same as the first, a 4th time, the same as the first, and you'll say, okay, that's the one. So that's really important. I find that the old-fashioned scales that have the dials don't tend to be buggy. No, they tend to be very consistent. So you don't have to worry about that with them. Most of us have digital scales now. As far as measurement goes, what's super important is to measure a variety of aspects that are related to weight loss. Don't just rely on your actual weight number. There are other ways to see whether or not you've lost fat. In fact, sometimes, and I put this out in another video, your fat loss can be masked by different kinds of body weight fluctuations due to water weight fluctuations and everything else. So you also want to have another couple of extra measurements to really capture whether or not you've lost weight, but more specifically body fat. So the other measurement that I like to do is with a tape measure. And they have these tape measures online that you can buy that are very convenient, that basically clasp, and then you can basically set it to where it's very comfortable around your waist and it's very easy to read. You don't have to hold it in place. And if you guys are interested, I can give you some recommendations. But I started off taking a measurement right around my waist at my belly button level. And I would record that. And what I found was that that was a really good measurement, especially for men, in terms of whether or not I actually lost fat, because that is where I carried the most amount of my fat, was my belly. And then what I found was that sometimes that one measurement kind of missed it. Like maybe at the belly button level, there wasn't a lot of progress made, but maybe below the belly button or above the belly button area, there was progress made in my gut. And so what I then did was I started to take 3 measurements. I would take one around my waist at my belly button level, one around my abdomen about 3 inches above my belly button, and another one 3 inches below. And that was really effective in terms of capturing any kind of fat loss that I had. So that on weeks when my weight stayed the same, or God forbid, went up a little bit, and I was like, no, that's impossible. I'm looking at myself in the mirror. I definitely look thinner. That was a way of validating that. And it's become very, very helpful. Don't get obsessed with this. We don't want you to be taking like 100 measurements every single week, but definitely a few pointed ones. For women that tend to carry it more in the hips, you would want to take a measurement around your hip area. You can also take measurements around your arm. You might not think you have a lot of arm fat, but we tend to lose body fat in every other area of our body first before we lose it in the most problematic area. And I know it's really unfortunate that it works that way. That's why a lot of times people will say, like, wow, you look thinner. And it's because they can see it in your face and that you've actually lost weight in your face. And you're looking like, my face, like, I don't care about my face as much as my abdomen or my hips or my butt or what have you. But that tends to be how it works, that it will, take, your body will burn body fat in all these other areas of your body before the most problematic areas. But you will get there, don't worry. My point is, you want to take measurements ideally at a few sites. So maybe one arm measurement right around the bicep, in the middle of the bicep, around the entire arm, and all with this tape measure I'm talking about. One in the abdomen area for sure, one in the hip area for sure, if you're a female that tends to carry weight in that area, and one right around the thigh. And that's important for men and women, right around mid-level in the thigh, and taking that measure. And, now that we all have these notepad apps, it's very easy to create a weight loss log. And you basically just put the date, your weight, and then 3 or 4 measurements in terms of the sites that you've specified as being important for you to monitor. And then you're going to consistently measure those areas each and every time. Now, another thing you can do, if you are, really determined to measure as fully as you possibly can your body fat loss, is measuring your actual amount of body fat. A lot of these digital scales have these body fat sensors. Don't trust them. They don't work very well. Some of the gyms have fancier models that are much better, but even they are not that good. I'd shy away from them. One of the best measures I have found is an old-fashioned caliper. And what a caliper basically is it looks like this, it's got this kind of apparatus where you basically pinch a section of your abdomen or your arm, depending on the manual where they want you to measure. But you pinch a section of either your thigh or your abdomen or your underarm, and then you put this caliper, you squeeze it onto that area, that fold of fat, and that will give you a reading in millimeters, usually. And then, depending on how many different sites they want you to measure, usually it's 3 different sites. It could be as many as 4, and sometimes it could be as few as just 1. You can then refer to the charts in the manual of this caliper in terms of what your actual body fat percentage is. And that tends to be pretty darn accurate. And the manual explains exactly how to do these measurements. At first, it takes a little learning, but you quickly learn how to do it. It's not very difficult. It's just pinching certain areas on your body and then putting that caliper, the prongs on it, and then reading the millimeters in terms of how thick that body fat fold is. And then you can go to the manual. I've actually a lot of times not even gone to the manual to see what the actual body fat was, because for me, it was just equally as informative to just know that the amount of millimeters was decreasing. So if I had a nice size body fat flap at my abdomen that was about, like, I don't know, 6 millimeters or 7 millimeters thick, and it went down to 5, then I knew that I was reducing body fat. But that's another thing you can do, but you don't need to do that. That's only if, like, you're really into this measurement concept and want to take it to the next level. Definitely though, you should be weighing yourself at a specified time each week and taking at least a few different measurements with the tape measure in different areas of your body to really capture that fat loss. Another measurement could be the neck too. That's another one, but that would be more like a secondary. That's not so important. All right, so this is something you need to do because it's super important for your motivation. God forbid you don't measure yourself in the right way and you think that you didn't lose any weight or lose any body fat or worse, gain some. And meanwhile, no, you did. And now you're like ready to throw in the towel and say the heck with it, right? I mean, that can have some serious consequences. This can have serious consequences if you don't learn to measure yourself in the right way so that you really can see for sure whether or not you're losing body fat. This is Dr. Fields. I'll have more to say on this at another time, and I hope you have a wonderful day.